There is a fight going on. It is a fight for our souls and for our allegiances. And I'm not talking about the danger to our soul from some supernatural evil. Rather, I'm talking about something very close to us. I'm talking about the God of commerce. And when I envision the God of commerce, I envision someone with some bad clothes, wearing Manolos, nice outfit, dressed to the nines, driving the best cars, probably the cars that I dream of driving. But the God of commerce is very real. And the God of commerce knows how uniquely vulnerable we are to the charms and temptations of the marketplace. No matter what else we are, citizens, voters, disciples, volunteers, preachers, parents, neighbors, friends, students, no matter what we call ourselves, we all share one identity in common. We are consumers. Try as we might to stand up against the God of commerce, he finds ever more imaginative ways to draw us in. His golden statues show up in the commercials for our favorite shows, in the banner ads on our Facebook pages and our Twitter and Instagram feeds, in the showrooms of our neighbors' yards and homes, and then we are reduced to consumers, even if we cannot afford those things. The God of commerce stokes a desire in us to have them. And we know that even as we give in to that God of commerce, we know there's something more. Something more, even as we give into the hustle and bustle of buying and spending, especially during the Christmas season, we know deep down that there is something more. And thank God we have the season of Advent. Because Advent gives us a fighting chance against the God of commerce. We take this season to wait for God to enter in, to interrupt things, to interrupt that hopeless drive for more, to help shake us out of this fog. And I'm going to tell you, I need that season. If you saw my Amazon habit, you'll know. I need to be interrupted. And so we take intentional time to wait for God to do something new in the middle of what we suspect is too much buying, too much indulging, too much fighting, too much of everything. But in the too muchness of it all, we hope for something more, something lasting, something consequential. And I submit to you today, hope is the weapon. Hope is the weapon that we have against any idol who opposes our God. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego waited for God, even in light of certain death. There was a battle for their souls, for their loyalty, and hope was their weapon against power. Now, let me disabuse you of something. The biblical scholars, do not consider this a historical account. I mean, come on, a furnace so hot that it'll kill the people, even put the people who put Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego in it. This is a tall tale known as a martyr legend or a court tale of conflict. And it's been told to demonstrate faithfulness to God. Faithfulness to God in light of overwhelming power arrayed against them. And I think it's a powerful demonstration for us, especially at the beginning of Advent, to show us how we can confront a world that refuses to step back and see God and let God move and let God do something new. You see, when the prophet Jeremiah prophesied to the exiles from Jerusalem to put down stakes in Babylon, to live and thrive where you are, to seek the welfare of Babylon, a group of young exiles with the gift of wisdom, including Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, were hired by King Nebuchadnezzar to be trained to serve in the royal court. And things are going as well as to be expected. They live and work. They seek the welfare of Babylon as they were instructed by God to do. But the world, the empire, will always seek to displace our allegiance to God. And King Nebuchadnezzar was no different. He commands allegiance to an idol. Specifically, he requires everyone to fall down and worship a golden statue. If anyone refuses to do so, the king would throw them into a furnace of blazing fire. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego will give the king their time and their talent and everything they know, but they will not fall down in service to his idols. They will worship only God, so they refuse to worship the golden statue. And don't you know, as soon as you stand on principle, some busybody is going to tell on you. Some busybody is going to try to get out and say, "Oh, these Shadrach, Meshach, they have the king's favor. Let's mess up their reputation and tell on them." But here's the thing: the accusation against the three young men, is true. It is true. They will not serve Nebuchadnezzar's statue. And the king wanted to know from his courtiers, could it be true that you would resist the commands of the leader in whose court you serve? They know the punishment for disobeying the command of the king. It is instant death. Who is the God that will deliver you out of the king's hand? That was the question that King Nebuchadnezzar asked Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego when they refused to worship. And we should not fool ourselves. That is the question that the world poses to us every day, especially those of us who claim allegiance to a power higher than the idols who tempt us. Who is the God that will deliver us? Who is the God that will deliver us from the God of commerce? Who is the God that will deliver us from a world that has no interest in love, hope, peace, and joy? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego feel no need to defend themselves. They testified that they trusted God. There is one more powerful than they, more powerful than the king, who is coming. God has the power to deliver them, but more important than that, here's the beauty. Even, and this is what they said, this is what I love it has such power. Even if God does not deliver us, we will not serve your idol. Even if God does not deliver us, we know God can do it, and we still won't serve your idol. They will be willing to go through the fire because they lived in anticipation of God doing something. They knew that if anybody could save them, in answer to Nebuchadnezzar's question, if anybody could save them, God can save them. So they trusted that God would enter into the situation. God would enter in. God will be revealed, whether in their deaths or in their life. God will be revealed. So when they are thrown into the furnace, they go in trusting God. For all they knew that they were going to die. The furnace is so hot, they are not going to make it through. And so they go in trusting God, go in bound, yet trusting God. And what the king saw in that furnace baffled him. 3 people went into the furnace, but he saw 4 people in it. He saw 4 figures walking through the fire. Who is this other person? An angel, a God? We don't know. But when Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego come out of the furnace, their clothes are not burned. The hair on their heads is not singed. And they don't even smell like they've been in a fire. I don't know what happened. I don't know who was in that fire with him. I guess I know. But I know that God's faithful ones came through the fire. Now, this legend testifies to us loudly that even in the Advent season, as we pause to wait for God. We pause and wait for God to enter time and space. We pause and wait for God to interrupt our routine of consuming, indulging, and succumbing sometimes to the idols around us. We know that we have to encounter the gods. We have to encounter the idols. The idols, and there are so many of them. The idols of division, the idols of politics, the idols of commerce. We have to confront all of them just to give ourselves a hopeful chance to anticipate God doing something in our midst. And that's the discipline of Advent. Oh, you say, Pastor, what is this season about? I know Christmas is coming. I know all about Jesus. I know. Surprise. You might just serve God's people. You might actually do something nice without expecting return. You might give yourself to something bigger than what the banner ads tell us to buy. You might serve a meal to someone who needs it. You might give a little bit of extra to the people who are serving those in need. If we say no to the idols, we might just make room in our hearts for someone we didn't like yesterday. We might just hold hands and walk through the fire with someone who's been struggling, whether it be with depression or addiction. That's the warning. Because we open ourselves up to God's movement. When we say no to the powers, we open ourselves up to God to jump inside and do something crazy. I didn't know I was that generous. I didn't know I could love that deeply. And let me warn you another thing. If we do step back, if we do wait expectantly for God, if we do say no to the powers, especially the God of commerce, those gods will strike back. The empire will strike back. Will come after us. Now, the God of commerce is very attractive. Just going to provide you the new things that you want to purchase. My Amazon wish list stays updated. But the question for us when we are called to shop, when we are called to celebrate how much we have, the call to just indulge how much we get, to sing and party and celebrate in service to comers, the question for us will we be willing to go through the fire in anticipation of God stepping in? If we turn our attention to sharing and serving and giving and bearing witness, we may just have to go through the fire. But the promise is that there is one who is more powerful than us who is coming. One who is more powerful than us is going to walk with us through the fire. I suspect that's what happened with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. One more powerful than they was there with them in the fire. And if we believe that God has indeed called us to live as God's people, there will come a day when we will have to resist the gods and empires making their claims on our loyalty. And we'll have to take the consequence. And I know don't get me wrong, this is not a Pollyannish story. Sometimes the faithful ones actually do get consumed by the fire. Sometimes the faithful ones do have to fall by the sword. History is replete with examples of God's people falling by the sword, getting consumed by the fire because they dared stand up against the powers that be. But who is the God that will deliver us from the empire's hand? I know that God is strong and mighty. I know that even as I see what happened to Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that God is faithful to stand with us. And I believe that our hope will be vindicated. Just as Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego's hope was vindicated when they confronted the king in his furnace. Just as Moses' hope was vindicated when he confronted Pharaoh and the power of his royal chariots. Just as Paul's hope was vindicated when he confronted the council and their prison that held him and Silas there. And just as Jesus' hope was vindicated when he faced Pilate, the mob, and the cross. They were all vindicated, fallen by the hand of the empire, but they were all vindicated. That's our hope during this season. That whether we live or die, when we confront the powers, God will be revealed. There is one more powerful than us who is coming. That is our hope.